The Historical Society has long been in the business of collecting artifacts of Pennacook's early history. We're very fortunate that we were able to protect this whole homestead. The original plan was actually to move the 1774 house onto this lot and have a museum there, and we were in the early stages of developing the plan to do that when the barn was threatened.
Building person from Vermont decided that he wanted to buy this barn and tear it down and move it out. We don't know exactly where. We think Colorado, but we're not positive of that. It was a great savings not to have that happen.
We've had a number of groups come already and go through the barn and go through the house. We are still working on making them more presentable for public showing, but they're very interesting in their current condition and showing early construction methods. Benjamin and Nathaniel Rolf settled on this land in the early 1770s, and the land was owned by their grandfather, Henry Rolf, who was one of the original proprietors of Concord. His two grandsons came up here and settled, presumably built a rough log cabin for the first few years, and around 1774 built what is now the northern half of this building. At that time, it was located on the site of 6 Pennacook Street, where it remained until sometime in the 1800s when it went over to Merrimack Street, and then later came back here to Pennacook Street, kind of where it wasn't very visible behind the barn. And then last spring,
Yes.
we moved it to its current location, where hopefully it will stay for many generations to come.
One of the questions that comes up every time I run into it is, why did you bother to move it? Well, the reason for moving it was because of the fact that some of it was never on a foundation, first of all, it was just on blocks. And therefore, some of it was rotting out and had to be jacked up and done. And while we were at it, we moved it into an area where we feel as though it's more envisioned for people to see where it was compared to where it was before.
A few years after we acquired the barn, the 1834 house came on the market, and some of the members of the board said, well, we should look into that. So now we have that too, which is a huge, huge benefit to the organization, because while these buildings are wonderful historic buildings, there isn't heat or electricity in any of them. So in terms of having meeting space or space to do events, it would have been totally seasonally based. So having the 1834 house is great. This barn, as near as our architectural historians can figure, was constructed around 1790. And what's unusual about it is that it was a very large barn, the size of 2 typical English barns, joined together at the outset. So it was built all at the same time, and it's twice the size of your typical English barn. English barns were the only style of barn that the early colonists knew how to build, and they had the doors on the sides. Needless to say, after a decade or two of New England winters, they started building barns with the doors on the gable ends. So that's one easy way to tell really early barns in New England from later barns.
Definitely was built by hand, and everything was put up without any help from machinery of any sorts, actually. So it's quite amazing to see what is been done in there to figure that they did it that way. I think they saw the potential here by being at the at the beginning of where the Kentucky River goes into the Merrimack River, and all the water power there was, because they built a sawmill up on Borough Road and another one. Then of course they ended up with the one that's on Merrimack Street now.
The mission of the Pennacook Historical Society is to preserve the past for future generations. And in this day and age, when people are so mobile, children don't have 2 or 3 generations of their family living nearby to provide an opportunity for them to learn how our society got to where it is today. So I think that local historical societies play a really important role by providing opportunities for children who may be growing up many hundreds of miles from where their family's roots are, to learn about what life was like for previous generations. It's not only been an excellent project, but it has made many other projects possible and will continue to do so for generations long beyond ours.